Hello everyone, welcome to my panel, which as you saw there was a crazy introduction video. I did not make that, but I think it's absolutely hilarious, and I'm here with a bunch of CSM members, candidates, as well as Lanctharus. So, okay everyone, introducing you guys now. So we have Lanctharus, Steve Ronuken, Sullen, who is on a plane, so he may cut in and out, Corbexx, Gorski, and Jin'taan. Do you guys want to give a little introduction about yourself, starting with Corbexx?
Hello, I'm Corbexx, and I was on CSM10, and I'll be retiring soon.
Alright, and Steve?
Hi, I'm Steve Ronuken. Get the right pronunciation. I was on CSM9, CSM10, now CSM11. They can't get rid of me that easily. Yep, I do industry stuff and third-party stuff. I'm also known as Fuzzy Steve because, well, I'm somewhat fuzzy at times.
Alright, Gorski?
Hello, I'm Gorski Car. I'm CSM 9 and 10 and now 11 member.
Sullen, if you're here.
Yeah, Sullen Decimus on CSM11, presenting music in wormholes a little bit.
Alright, Jin'taan.
Hello, I'm Jin'taan, and I've just been elected to CSM 11.
Alright, and Lanctharus.
Hey everyone, I'm Lanctharus, co-host of the Caps Table podcast, also the executive producer of CSMWatch, and I like cats.
Alright, so Lanctharus we obviously have on camera. Everyone else introduce themselves, so hopefully you guys can recognize voices. If not, I will try to use names as much as possible. If you have any questions, Twitch chat, feel free to ask them. So, CSM, we got a good mix of you guys, both old and new and brand new CSM members. So, how you guys feeling? Like, are you guys excited for this? Jin'taan, Sullen, I know you guys are brand new for CSM 11. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. We've had access to some very interesting ideas from the rest of our CSM, and it's also great to be able to talk to people who obviously are very knowledgeable and very passionate about the game. It's been pretty awesome to be able to talk to CCP as well, and even pass on some things. Can't talk about anything, but hey, it sounds like they've got some great plans for us this year, and I'm looking forward to see where it goes.
All right, Sullen, you have anything to add?
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun already, just like getting introduced to all the different people. We already had our first meeting with more meetings to come, and yeah, I mean, right now we're kind of going through the honeymoon period where everyone's super excited, so it'll be interesting to see. Just we have a lot of information that people are willing to share. It'll be interesting to see then like how this continues from here on out.
Nice, good to hear. Corbexx, I see you miking up. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh, sorry, my mistake.
It's all good. So we all know CSM 10 probably wasn't the best CSM kind of period, if you want to put it nicely. I know there are a lot of issues, a lot of problems, a lot of probably miscommunication and maybe personality clashing. I know there are a few people here who can speak to that from experience, including Gorski, Corbexx, and Steve, because they were on the previous CSMs. Do you guys want to... I know some people are curious to hear about that. Do you guys want to maybe give an update, start on that at all?
Well, we've been going over this like multiple times now about the whole drama and stuff, but yeah, I'm having good hopes for future at least, because the last season wasn't that great. Mistakes were made.
Yeah, I'm expecting this year to be a lot smoother, with there now being two people instead of just the one person. And if we need it, we've got a clearly designated escalation path. If we can't get a hold of the CSM coordinators, we can take it a step higher if we need to. Hopefully that won't be needed in any way. There's also been a fair amount of talk about how stuff can get smoothed out, just to try and make sure that none of this happens again. In the end, communications with devs directly wasn't really affected, but it was the institutional communication. So if I wanted to talk to a particular dev, I could just go and do it. That really wasn't a problem. The problem was more when the CSM as a whole was wanting to meet with a team that didn't work out particularly well, or when a team was wanting to talk to the CSM, it was that communication that broke down more than anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that, like CSM, like you mentioned, talking to devs one-on-one, but that's not really the goal of CSM. The goal is to have kind of community representatives or people to represent the larger EVE player base to kind of talk to the devs as a whole, so that way nothing kind of slips through the cracks and everything is kind of considered.
Yeah, exactly. A single member of the CSM is useful to CACP still, but it's the group and how the group interacts with each other, which is useful for CCP to see, where they can see the arguments that we have about what we think about things, because there's always going to be differences of opinion. It's just the way it works. What's good for one area of space may not be good for another, and it's just something which, even if it's not a deliberate, this will be bad for that area of space, people just don't necessarily think about it.
Yeah, EVE is a very large and complex game, and it's hard for people to even kind of be experts at one area, let alone all of the game itself. I know there have been a lot of not issues, but I know that's a huge thing with a lot of players. Like, they're considered good in one aspect of the game, but that doesn't mean they're knowledgeable or quote unquote good at the rest of the game.
That was an interesting point that Corbexx brought up in our kind of pre-broadcast get-together discussion.
All my
where he
points
was-
were good.
Well, yeah, but like an exceptionally easy to articulate point outside of that was that you were advocating for less subject matter experts on the CSM and more kind of community facilitators.
So, well, it's not so much that. But we'll go on to that. So, it's not so much subject matter experts because they're very, very useful. The issue is that in a lot of regards, stuff can be missed, and you also tend to get biased stuff because at some fundamental level, everyone on CSM is biased to some extent. Whether they like to admit it or not. I'm biased towards wormhole space. Steve is probably biased to industry, high sec. You're biased to nullsec. But people are obviously also potentially going to be more biased to their own alliance and stuff like that. And this is where just getting CCP in contact with multiple experts for a certain thing and sitting down and having a little chat with a group of people takes away that bias and can give much better feedback than just like one or two people on the CSM doing it.
Yeah.
Well, I think. I'm sorry if you don't mind. I think that's one of the misconceptions that need to be cleared up at the CSM. Everyone seems to believe that you have to stay, like you stated, be neutral, not necessarily speak out or say anything, particularly in an area of the game that you don't necessarily know about or even have an understanding about. But it's like it is, for lack of a better term, a focus group. People are going to talk. People are going to go ahead and bounce ideas off of each other. And it's the assumption that everyone's going to be on their best behavior and not step on each other's toes that get conflict as a negative thing. I actually see conflict as a positive thing, and that the kind of reframing that the fact that people are going to have expertise, people are going to be biased towards it, but as long as they're open about it and freely state, you know what, I'm going to watch out for this particular area of the game or this area of the game because I don't know an awful lot about your side of the game, not to be exclusionary, but in the fact that I just don't know about your part of the game. Why don't you talk to me about it? And it's possible like a lead into a larger discussion about what your needs as a player are.
Yeah. Go to what I was going to mention, subject matter experts are not a bad thing to have on the CSM because sometimes you just want a quick response on what do you think of this thing. That it's useful to be able to just have a snap reaction on it because one of the problems with focus groups, because I've seen people saying, why don't you just form a bunch of focus groups as a replacement for the CSM? The problem with that is time. Because it takes time to form the focus group, it takes time to pull the focus group. Sometimes you just want a quick snap response, is this insane or not? So having subject matter experts on the CSM is a good thing. I think the biggest problem of the main mistake for people on the CSM is having politicians on the CSM, because that's not what the CSM is for.
It isn't, but it's used for that.
Yeah.
And that's the other issue is that it gets dragged into the metagame, whether you like it or not. In fact, there's a discussion about, a growing discussion about the fact that, having politicians, and also sometimes the unspoken statement that, if I get on CSM, perhaps it's some kind of like quick way or quick a way to facilitate me becoming a dev at CCP, which is quaint and entertaining. And I would, caution anyone who actually is thinking that if you're running for CSM because you want to get a job at CCP, that is a horrible, horrible decision.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and a lot
Turns
of
out that the best way to get a job is to apply for the job directly. Shocker, I know.
Who would have thought that a resume was an effective way to get a job at a game
Haven't they
developing
been
company?
advertising that?
I mean, yeah, they have like CCP careers. I follow them on Twitter, but a lot of times it's also like I can see where people can kind of like get the misconception that it's good for networking, but just because you're good friends with a dev or you talk to a lot of devs doesn't mean that you're going to be like the first on the block to hire. You obviously need that resume and need whether it be experience or like being shown that you can work good in a team or be a good leader. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into working for CCP, and for some reason people don't realize that. They just think if they're friends with the dev, then they can get as far as they want in the game, which isn't true at all. But I find it interesting how you point out the quick turnaround. Steve, you point out the quick turnaround is super important for CCP because there are a lot of times where the devs may either get an idea or there may be something that's broken that they either need to fix or to figure out how to fix. And I know earlier when we were all talking kind of off the air, it was the talk of like being able to make it to these meetings. The CSM obviously doesn't just have their 2 summits. They meet quite often. And so I find it interesting how you pointed that out because like with the time zone differences, I don't know if people realize that CCP is Icelandic time. So obviously it's a lot easier for the Europeans, hopefully for the Europeans to meet. Whereas the Americans, I know whenever there are mass tests in the game, I always kind of get screwed like trying to help out with a mass test simply because I'm at work or because I'm doing other things or sleeping, if anything, like with the AT going on.
You'd actually be surprised because obviously they are European time zone, but European time zone means they want you to come and talk to them in the European time zone, and if you're in the European time zone, you're going to be working during European prime time.
Oh yeah, so when CCP is working, obviously most of the Europeans are working, so therefore you can't really take time off work to go and meet for a couple hours or whatever.
Normally people just phone in via Skype for the meetings, but sometimes that's obviously not
The nice
possible.
thing is the meetings are all recorded as well. And to be fair, like last year we had a huge issue where meetings weren't being uploaded at all, and last time I counted, over 60% of them were missing. But they've now all been found, which is fantastic. Logibro is like amazing, and Guard as well, and all of them are going to get put up. Or at least they did last year, which was super, super good. So people can still watch all the meetings and then comment and stuff about stuff later on if necessary.
Yeah, there's also the async talk, which, to be honest, happens more than the meetings do. That's just with hip chat, where someone goes, I want your opinion on this thing, and you can just give it then and there. And if someone isn't on at the same time, they can just leave a comment when it comes up.
Actually, I got a question for...
Yeah, I was going to say the hip chat has actually been amazing since they've been doing it. Like if you utilize that, you don't have to necessarily have your voice. You can leave a message. You can come back later. I mean, that's really where you can get a lot of stuff done if you utilize that.
I had a question for primarily the older members, and like of course the new members on CSM can chime in. There's been a lot of discussion and debate about the workflow and the amount of time that being on CSM is required. Now that was not necessarily the case. We've gone from a 2 release a year cycle to now back to the 6-week release cycle. How's that affected the overall work, the workload and the amount of workflow, and kind of the urgency and the need to get feedback for CCP?
One of the issues was just we weren't, to begin with, up to speed with getting stuff turned around as fast. It also didn't help that most of the devs weren't even on HipChat, and the fact we went from Skype to Slack to HipChat, which is like a terrible thing to do in a year. So we lost more and more people. So it wasn't good, but we managed to... One of the things I was pushing for was to have regular meetings with the actual production team, or just someone on the team to let us know every cycle what they were working on. So we had a much better feel of what was actually going on, and they're now happening. So there's monthly meetings with the production group, and also monthly meetings with the EP as well. So we get to talk to Seagull, or they'll get to talk to Seagull, which is going to really help.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes just knowing what you should be talking about, it was difficult last year. The change in communication platforms was a bit of an issue just because of the way it worked out. People weren't being, I don't like to use the word forced, but it's almost the case. It wasn't part of their normal workflow to have Slack up, or to have Skype up, or for a while to have HipChat up. Now, HipChat is part of their regular workflow. They use it for communication within their groups normally. So it's not another thing which they have to have running. It's just there. So it makes it far, far easier for people just to talk to us.
I had never heard of HipChat, so but I'm really glad you guys at least are trying to break that not communication barrier, but like I guess time zone barrier or people's work life, real life barrier.
Yeah, HipChat is basically like Slack. It's the same kind of product. It does all the same things, but doesn't cost anywhere near as much, and integrates far better into the other stuff that they use, like their bug tracker. We dump a bug tracking number in, and it pops up the details about the bug.
Well, it's integrated with Confluence, which is a web-based sort of thing they use. In fact, I think it's made by the same people.
It's Atlassian.
Yeah, it's basically a wiki. And something new goes on the CSM space, which we can see, it gets notification there. So the integration is nice. It just lets us know what's going on. There's still a few small things to get worked out, but it's getting there.
That's good. I do know we were discussing a bit earlier, and we were talking about how voting was down. And I know the current voting data for this recent CSM has not been released yet. A lot of people I've noticed on Twitter are super curious about it, but I guess the general question is, how do you guys feel about voter representation? And I know there's been a few comments about how, like, some people think, since voting is down, apparently, and then, like, there's not enough good representation within what people would say, like, a good even representation in the community. How do you guys feel about that? Or do you think there's any merit to that claim?
Yep.
I think the biggest problem with all of you should have X people for this space and X people for that space is just getting it in a way that cannot be gamed and doesn't end up with, for example, bad representation getting on just because there was no one else. That's always a potential issue. Because will you always find enough people that are knowledgeable about a space? Not always. For example, if low-sec this year, there were some good low-sec candidates, but were there enough to make up the numbers which some people are talking about? Probably not. And then you've also got how many should you have representing for low-sec, as it's a relatively small proportion of the player base. Ditto with wormholes. I think it's about 10% of people live in wormholes. So how many wormhole representatives should there be? But the wormhole representatives, the wormhole players who are around tend to vote more than many people who are, say, in high sec. Then you've got the problem, yes, 85% of people live in high sec, but how many of those actually particularly care about high sec because they're actually for all?
I believe it's 85% people are in high sec.
Yeah, it's a number which has been bandied around.
So I got a little bit of.
I was just gonna say to kind of add to what Steve was talking about. Yeah, we've been kind of shared with like the results of the voting. I can't release it or I can't say anything, but like I mean we've kind of gotten to see a little bit, and yeah, I mean I think when people see how many people actually are voting, that's a huge deal. Like we were kind of shocked actually at just some of the results ourselves.
So I got a question for you guys, and this because we had seen an uptick in voter turnout for CSM, initially for CSM 10, and which it was going on an upward projection, but now of course there was a much lower turnout for CSM 11. What is the effect of the kind of troubles, drama, whatever you like to call it, that happened in CSM 10, and how could it have affected people's general like view of the organization, and also kind of like how did that affect voter turnout?
I think the first thing to understand is that this election had kind of the dual thing hanging over its head, where there wasn't any particularly hugely contested positions. It wasn't like, oh, there's this, there wasn't someone the LoSec, for example, candidates could really rally around. There wasn't, no offense to Noobman, but there wasn't someone that the wormhole people could rally around in the same way they had with the two-step. Equally, I think there was only the block candidates for nullsec and maybe Mr. Hyde. And that kind of drives turnout down to begin with. But also it wasn't particularly well advertised, and there was obviously a change in the people who are running the CSM, Logibro and Guard, taking over from, I think it was it Lulo?
Yeah,
Lilo,
Lulu.
Yeah, okay.
Well, but
So
then again,
that's obviously going to impact it.
I
But
mean,
yeah,
it
like,
also
the
doesn't
fact-
help that nullsec is more organised, which is always going to then get better turnout. And then you've also got the issue with the Scion drama, the no Scion rules, which is going to get more people in that area of space to vote, just to like have their own little dig back at CCP.
but the drama did affect, because I know I've talked to at least two former members of CSM, who basically stated that they're not going to run for CSM 11 because at that point they saw the organization as basically functionally dead and just and beyond repair, because what was allowed to happen happened.
Hey, was that me?
Not you.
It's pretty accurate.
Well, there you go. At 3.
Yeah. The changes which have happened since the time when you had to have your candidacy in, I would say that has definitely helped with the state of things.
It's much better now.
Yeah. So, for example, Corbexx, would you have run again if this had changed earlier?
No, because I want a break.
That makes a lot
But
of sense
I wouldn't
as well.
have run. But yeah, but I wouldn't have run. I wouldn't have not run for that. For the other reason, though. Like this term was horrible, and it's much better now. So potentially, if I didn't want a break, I would have run. Yeah.
So you're looking forward and excited about how, I don't want to say the reform, but how CSM is being handled now as compared to the past.
Yeah, but I still think it needs changes at some level.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, who say what changes would you recommend, Corbexx?
I don't honestly know, but I just the scope of this, or not, maybe not the scope is the wrong word, but it's the CSM is getting narrower and narrower, and it's not representing the player base.
Is that a
yeah,
function of, I guess, the kind of the elections, like how?
Oh, I think it is, and
yeah.
it's maybe the voting system doesn't help either, because the voting system super favors like organised big block vote candidates.
I disagree about the favouring. It's representative. If people had voted, then it would have been different.
If people are, yes, that's the
that
issue.
is
If
the very
people have
key
voted, but
point.
now the issue is people are not voting, and this really favours the nullsec votes, because they don't have to worry about like, oh, we need to make sure we vote this much for one guy. Like Mittens in that one group, what was it, over 10k people?
Yeah.
Like now he doesn't need to worry about that. They just put the list and it works it out mathematically to optimize it for them.
Yes, but at that point, it's favouring the people who are actually voting, and that isn't a bad
Which
thing.
are?
Well,
Your point. There are two separate points here. One is the people who are voting are primarily nullsec. That I'm not disputing in any way. What I'm disputing is the fact that the people who are voting are being represented. If people don't vote, they don't get represented. And should the system change that? I personally don't think so.
I do.
I
I
don't
think there
think-
needs to be somewhere so that you can get actual, like, better representation of the player base.
do you think that CCP? So I know voting. One sec, Sullen. So I know voting is all out of game. Do you think if CCP were to somehow either enforce some mechanic of in-game voting or getting more information to the players, do you think more people would vote, or that they would be able to vote better for their own representation? Like, how do you think CCP can help?
Undoubtedly.
Well,
Like-
I don't think forcing people, because all that does is ends up with people randomly voting, which
Yeah, that
probably
just
isn't a good
increases
idea.
the signal to noise ratio
Yeah.
of votes.
But the better advertisement and stuff like that can certainly help.
Okay.
Personally, I think
Yeah, I was just kind of curious exactly
I don't
what
feel like
Corbexx would do.
the
Like, what do you
current
recommend to make it better besides the advertising?
I'm honestly not sure. I mean, part of me is like, it would be nice if there could be areas of space represented, but I can't think of a way of doing it without it being game to hell.
I
What-
personally believe that there should be limit. Effectively, we shouldn't be saying, "Oh, you must be." You know, there are seven slots for nullsec and 2 slots for this area of highsec or whatever like that. You know, that kind of thing. What I feel is that I feel that every area of the game, every play style should be in some degrees. Every core play style, at least, should be in some degrees represented within the CSM. I don't know how that they do that, but I feel that that is something that's going to be important when they come up within this term, and it's something that we're going to have to work towards to find a workable solution with. If we want the CSM to continue to be taken seriously
what-
as a way of representing
I'm
their
kind
base
of
to
curious then.
CCP.
Go on, Sol.
I'm kind of curious then, if you want to do that, then what happens then if someone gets what happens if someone gets elected Corbexx for a certain type and then they change their playstyle?
Well, that doesn't matter as long as they keep representing their stuff. Like, okay, I've joined Goon, I still represent Wormhole Space for the whole time. Which is the important thing.
So I'm curious. So what happens when?
And I know you do, Corbexx. I'm just kind of curious though, because people will then look at that and they'll point the finger saying like, well, he's
Oh,
really
yeah.
not representing me. I don't care what he says, because now look at them.
Well, I mean, that's yeah, totally thing. But I mean, that's where somewhere like CCP should just literally come out and say, no, he still is doing this. I mean, the other thing is potentially reforming the CSM and changing it so that there's less NDA and more stuff is just made available to everyone. I mean, I'm a big fan of taking a lot of the emphasis off the CSM and just having them organised sounding boards and stuff like that, which is what I've done the last 2 years. I'd much rather it went towards that. I mean, Scion put up an amazing proposal which was based on basically what me and Sugar did, and that had the backing of tons of people at CCP all the way up to CCP Seagull, but it didn't make traction. I mean, some people just don't want to organise sounding boards. Some people on the CSM don't even know who they represent, which like really like makes it hard to actually do anything like that. But
Well, two issues here is that the fact that we have to be realistic when it comes to the kind of people that we're voting in to represent, and the fact that once you vote for a particular person, you're not freezing them in time. People evolve, people's playstyles evolve. Their views change. You're not going to necessarily vote for a LoSec candidate. That person isn't instantly going to be frozen in time to only represent LoSec. And on top of that, because of exposure with other kinds of candidates, they become more accustomed and attuned to what's going on with the rest of the game. So there's that issue. As for trying to kind of word it correctly, as for the kind of player style, the issue all comes down to like player outreach. Is one of the things or one of the functions of CSM is to engage in some kind of player outreach to kind of inform and educate people in regards to what what they do, what they're going to be involved in. For the longest time, there's 2 or 3 individuals on CSM who are generally pretty good at this outreach, but then there's other individuals that say, "Yeah, effort, I don't want to get involved in it." I point a good example of, actually, I'll point a finger to say, for instance, UAX Death, and the absolute like lack of any kind of communication either with people who would like to reach out to him, like so for instance, like CSMWatch tried to reach out to him, try to get some comments from him, and that never happened. And basically non-engagement for the larger player base. And how much is it that reaching out to other players becomes now almost a required skill set from anyone being voted into CSM?
I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
No, but there are other people who usually say, well, that's not my thing, or that's not my style, or I shouldn't have to be, oh, you know what, let me fish it out to, like, say, Sugar Kyle, who's really good at it, because I'm not good at it, and I'll let her do it. But then you kind of end up giving someone a pass on that. Well, pull some weight.
I mean, a lot of that is where then the CSM should be able to call out other CSM members. I mean, we've had CSM members that have straight up said one thing to CCP and then have turned around and straight up lied to everyone in the public on Reddit. I mean, Manny's a great example of that. He openly was like two-faced to the player base, and I mean, stitched up people and all sorts on the CSM. And it's just like there needs to be much more openness and much more accountability, which at the moment there just isn't.
Yeah,
Well-
to add to what Corbexx is saying, and just to say something, last year I allowed myself to be stopped from saying certain things because people were thinking that certain channels that we had between just the CSM members, not CCP, were not to be talked about in public. That's not going to happen with me this year. If someone has said something, as long as it's open source, then I will talk about it quite happily in public. So if someone is trying to be two-faced, I'm not going to turn around and have them stop me saying that, because the communications between the CSM are not covered by the NDA, except where they're explicitly talking about things which are under NDA, if that makes sense. But I can talk about the communications themselves, just not necessarily the contents of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely professional courtesy and stuff like that that comes in, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to turn around and say, nah, come on, this is like
Exactly.
BS.
I mean, honestly, like, and not to, promote what I've been doing. One of the reasons that CSMWatch even came to existence is because myself and a couple of people kind of said, there's not an awful lot of kind of feedback or transparency or knowledge of what's been going on, and I'm a big believer in the sunlight is one of the greatest disinfectants. And so started to kind of shine that light onto what's going on in the process in the organization, and kind of show people what's going on, and kind of like highlighting the good work that certain people are doing, and emphasis on the work that some people aren't doing, or just kind of passing off as, yes, I'm doing something, but I'm not. As current members of CSM and current new members, what has your opinions of those kind of like player-driven movements have done to kind of galvanize, maybe change the environment of the CSM for the better? And don't worry, I'm a big boy. I can take criticism, either good or bad.
Well, sometimes like when you call for people, I think like at least I feel it's like just like fishing for drama or some shit like that sometimes. Yes, but like some of the stuff you've done is good.
But drama is drama, but the thing is that when you get two people into a room, you're going to have drama. Let's face it. The thing is that is it positive, and that the fact that you're trying to bring forward issues to light and educate people and get them more engaged in the game, as opposed to the kind of drama where it's like his mother smells funny, and you're just trying to obfuscate or kind of fire start in order to get the attention drawn away from something that you're doing.
I would say the concept behind them is generally good. Sometimes it can sometimes be difficult to talk about some things just because there isn't a lot to talk about, and you can only talk so much about someone's opinions on something when that thing itself is not open. It's generally a good thing, and I will try to make myself available whenever appropriate, which is pretty much all the time, so people get to hear me. Yay.
But do you think, like, for instance, like something like CSMWatch has been an overall net positive? Has it kind of obfuscated? Has it kind of clouded the playing field, or is it actually a benefit for the player base?
I would say it's a net positive. Unfortunately, I think last year the problems which were happening were not ones which could be particularly helped by it, but in general, it is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, the issues that happened last year, all of that would have been sort of NDA'd, or it would have just been like, hey, there's been systematic, like, communication issues that have totally broke down, and it's all fucked. And that's literally all you'd have been able to say.
I kind of want to go back because I know Twitch chat has been talking a lot about, still talking about voting and player representation. I know General Stargazer brought up the point of, do you think CSM should be picked by CCP based on feedback a player has given historically instead rather than just direct people voting? but CCP
Oh, God.
instead taking all of the collaboration and input from the players and then
Oh,
picking
no.
people?
Oh,
Think that'd be bad?
No,
Yeah,
I mean the CSM should be filtering a lot of this stuff.
that would pretty much.
You know, if
That would
people complain,
basically stop people who don't particularly write articles very well, or people who have been historically very useful who haven't written many articles that kind of analyze things or propose solutions from getting onto the CSM. It also means that people, for example, in HiSec, there are relatively few analysis blogs that are dedicated purely to HiSec. There are obviously some, and they're very good, but I don't think that all of those people are going to be the people who want to run for CSM. Also, you don't want to completely fucking... Like, I'm not saying we should remove all of the block candidates, because that's never going to happen without some ridiculous micromanage, I'm going to look at every single CSM member and everything they say kind of finagling. What we want to do is we want to make it so that people can be able to join the CSM without having to go through the routes of block candidates or being very Eve famous. And whilst that does exist in the current format of the CSM, I personally do not think that it is the route there is clear enough or strong enough.
well,
I mean-
let's also face. I'm sorry if you don't. For interrupt.
So I was going to say the one good thing that CSM is very good at is, in general, we know people. So if someone comes to me and says, "Hey, we're looking for these sort of people," I'll be able to go out and find them. And I think that's one of the things that CCP could use us for. But yeah, you can't really limit it or have them pick people. I mean, we saw what happened when CCP picked all the people for the D3 destroyers, and yeah, it was like
Some would
such
even
a...
say for the capital discussion as well. The capital group is
Well,
is
the
pretty
capital
much
group
mirrored
wasn't
the
as
same.
bad
The
because we
capital
got
was
to
good.
have our sense in.
We got
at
our
least
sense into
Larry
the
can come to
T3
me
group
and
as
said,
well. The problem with the T3 group was they didn't have time for it, and like they weren't going to do it. The capital one was pretty good actually.
yeah, the capital one was much better. We got actually to give feedback on who we thought should be in there.
I know that's what Lanctharus touched on earlier, where people kind of create their own sounding boards, like as Corbexx put it, where you go out and find people to then ask their opinion and their, I guess, expertise to then bring back to CCP rather than having all those people talk directly to CCP.
Well, it becomes impossible. Where's the signal? Where's the noise? It all kind of blends into each other. You have to be able to way to kind of like filter out that information and kind of focus it down. Part of the issue, of course, is it has a time come where, besides the CSM, do players need to become more organized themselves and kind of self-organize and self-focus for the betterment of not necessarily the entire game, but their own game as well, and kind of like push proposals and kind of champion certain things that they want to see change in the game, and not just like a mad yelling of like thousands of raving nerds screaming at the top of their lungs.
Yeah, and I know Sullen, you wanted to say something. If you can feel free to say it now.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. I mean, kind of the main thing about the CSM is it's supposed to be the player's representation to CCP. So if you start having CCP actually make the selections, I mean, it's almost a conflict of interest there, because now you're having the advisors being selected by the people they're trying to advise, and you really don't want that. That kind of defeats the entire purpose of even having it then.
Yeah, if we're complaining about it being too one-sided one way or another, then you basically turn it into a true popularity contest. And, well, I know this guy, so it'll the kind of ghettoization of the CSM is going to actually get worse, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah, you end up with the echo chamber effect as well.
But our method is the current method that we have is not the best. It's not the worst. It's still a work in progress. It's messy. It's convoluted. People's opinions are conflict all the time. People get hurt. Get their emotions hurt. But it's actually overall it's the better way. I think the bigger issue is just getting people to actually participate and actually vote for the damn thing, as opposed to just like it's heavily skewed to people who nullsec. Well, again, it comes down to organization and the kind of the level of engagement you see in people who are like living in high sec, low sec wormhole space. And there's like deeper, community discussions that need to be had. Why is it that the wormholers can't organize. Well, one of them being is that they can't stand the sight of each other. I mean, I don't know if that's your opinion, Corbexx, but just getting everyone to kind of make up their minds with a group of that, by definition, where you despise each other to a point where you won't even talk to them, is
No, I think
problematic.
Yeah, I mean, in general, that's not really been that much of an issue this year. There just really hasn't been many strong candidates at all. So I think people are like, well, at least from all the people I spoke to at FanFest, and a lot of the people were like, I mean, probably half of them didn't even vote for Newman. The other people were like, well, he's the best there is. It's not someone that particularly want on there, but hey, it's better than nothing. So I think that's basically been the general feeling for W Space.
I was going to say, one of the things in particular when it comes to wormholes is the fact that, like, just if you look at the difference between, like, small corps that live in the C1s through C4s, they are vastly different from what you'll see in the C5 and C6 space. And it is very dramatic in terms of what those organizations are on versus somebody in the high ones. And a lot of times, like, someone like who Newman is might directly conflict with whatever it is, the things that they would want. So, I mean, it's really hard to even get wormholers to agree.
Now the thing is that, what do we then do to kind of engage the people who play in low sec and high sec, where two areas of the game where the player base, by just historically and by definition, aren't as in tune to what goes on in the game? And how do you kind of like deal with the general kind of belief in those areas where they basically, the first thing out of their mouth is, fuck the meta. I'm here to play a video game.
Steve, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really.
It was meant as a question, not a statement, So if anyone has any opinions or views on this, by all means, educate us.
I mean, the problem is if you don't vote, you don't get representation. And one of the issues is, like, people are like, oh, the CSM has no power, blah, 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 blah. And the next thing is, like, a change happens. It's like, oh, my God, the CSM, you're all terrible, blah, blah, blah. Why did you get CCP to do this? So, I mean, the CSM can influence a lot of stuff, but people definitely need to vote.
I think the voting in-game would actually have a big impact on who would actually do it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when we start up the game, it has like a little thing that says, oh, CSM voting is going on, and that's that little advertisement in the bottom of your loading. But, I mean, who honestly reads that most of the time? Most of the time it's just like, yeah, get me into my game, I don't really care. I mean, if they made even this small change with just something like on your Neocom, the first time that voting is activated, a little arrow that pops up, so it gets your attention, says, hey, by the way, voting is active. And then obviously after the first time, you can just say, I don't care, just make this go away, I don't want to do it. But even something as small as that, I think, would have major turnout differences.
Yeah, for sure. I know CCP recently I don't remember what it was they advertised, but there was something in game, and I was actually really surprised to see that there was just like something that popped up on my screen, or I got like an email or something about that. But there was some event CCP was putting on, and I got the notification. Whereas CSM, I think the only way I knew voting was happening is because I'm pretty in tune with the community, and then I'm also on Twitter. But not everyone uses Twitter. It's not like too grand to like use to communicate, especially from a video game perspective.
Yeah, CCP now have access to a notification system where they can just push notifications out. They are very much, because you're logged in, you get the notification. If you're not logged in, you don't. The most recent one that I heard about was when the permaban video was put out, which confused the hell out of a bunch of people when they got a notification saying permabanned.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I got 1 or 2 complaints about that.
That's...
and it's like we have to balance it with the fact that for as much we ask for advertising, there'll be a group of players who will vocally say, I don't want to see this because I just want to go ahead and play my game. I don't care about what's going on. But that is what it is.
And those are the same kind of people who complain of when the game changes in a way that they don't like.
Yeah.
Oh no.
With CSM9, they put out a mass mail in-game to people, and they received a lot of complaints about that, apparently. Just because it's people who don't want to get dragged into this kind of stuff, which is to be honest, one of the big problems with the whole representation, there are some people who you just cannot represent because they just don't care.
Yeah, and
Was
then
it last year we got shuttles, by the way? That was pretty cool as well.
I
And,
do
and you
know.
also, I'm
Go
sorry,
on.
but
No,
one of
go
the things
on.
like you said one of the things we do have to realize is that there's going to be sections of the player base that no matter how hard we try, we're not going to affect them. They're not going to get involved. They're not going to vote. They don't really care, and we'll make our peace with that and move on.
And then I think there's also the issue of getting people to vote is a little different than getting people to vote while informed. And I think that's a big hurdle, not only CCP, but then also you guys as CSM members or other CSM candidates also have to kind of like tackle that hurdle of how do we get people to vote for me, but not vote for me just because they see my name or because it kind of sounds familiar, but how do they vote for me because they know that I can represent them or do what they want me to do?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
that was a huge issue this year because there were so many candidates out there. I mean, like there was a ton of candidates this year in particular because everyone wanted to revamp it. I mean, you just had everyone throwing their hat in. I mean, if I didn't know who was running and I just wanted to get informed, I can't even imagine trying to go through the list of candidates this year.
Yeah, one of the big problems is that decent candidates who know what they're talking about will not get elected if people don't know who they are. And that's always a problem. Just the whole, if someone sees your name and they go, who? You're not going to get elected. So the name has to be out there. That's one of the reasons why the blocks have some benefits, because they can go vote for these people and then there's no real choice involved. There doesn't have to be. You just go, I vote, done. I've been lucky because my name is out there. A lot of people use my stuff. So I'm out, people can vote for me. But there are other people who the name is not familiar, so they won't vote for the person, regardless of how good they are.
Well, that were the thing this year, because like there weren't many like names I've heard before. It's like a lot of new faces around this time.
Yeah. If someone wants to be informed, there is a lot of information out there. The CSM interviews, they are useful. One of the downsides is there are quite so many of them, which is why the analysis shows tend to be slightly more useful, although obviously there's some bias in them. But it's getting informed voters, which is always going to be the problem, and there is no easy solution for it. Unfortunately, you can't do what the real world does, which is you just have political parties, so you vote for the party that you want, because that just does not work in EVE, unless you go to, this is the CF, well, this is the Imperium, this is PL, vote for one of them, which leads to the situation which it looks like we have now. Obviously, it's not actually as bad as it seems, because some people in PL aren't really PL candidates, they just happen to be in PL.
Yeah, and so I know there's a lot of tools and resources out there. There's like a voter match thing where you answer questions. Obviously, you have all the candidacy interviews or podcasts of people discussing it. I know I'm on Open Comms, and we routinely discuss CSM. I want to say it was more drama than the candidates. But it's always really interesting, all these resources that are out there, but then at the same time, none of them are still yet in-game unless you're kind of flying around and you see the person in local and they're like, hey, vote for me for CSM. And so that's kind of, I think that's another thing. I don't know if it's up to CCP to change that to incorporate in-game, or if it's up to the players and kind of the community to make that resource more available of getting to know the candidates or being able to see which ones can represent players. Any thoughts?
It would be quite nice to bring the CSM more into the law. Exactly how you do it, I'm not so sure, but like the scope videos and so on, if there could have been mentions of the CSM in there, and then possibly just going, and these are obviously just our political analysts talking about stuff, and you should go listen. But yeah, it's always going to be difficult to bring people in, and I cannot see a good solution for that, which won't lead to annoyance for a sizable minority of people.
Just deal with the fact you're going to annoy some people and just be done with it. And that's my opinion. You
Pretty
know,
much.
Yeah, I mean it's a little of A and it's a little of B. It's a little bit of a CCP getting more involved and kind of promoting the organization. It's a little of B in at the fact that we need to do more of a better job of just talking to the point where we to the point of exhaustion, where people's like, oh my God, he's talking about CSM again. Oh, please just let it go. Then you're at least being effective in actually reaching people.
Yep, and I think that's kind of what people need, because I know I played for a little over 2 years, and this was, I want to say, the first time I voted for CSM, purely because I was more involved with the community, so I knew kind of what it was. Whereas the other times, like, I barely knew what FanFest was, let alone CSM or any of these other like great EVE organizations or events or whatever. I know we're kind of approaching the end of the hour, so we can start talking about your hopes and dreams for the future of CSM. I know Jin'taan and Sullen are both new to CSM, so you guys can talk about your hopes and dreams, as well as like Gorski and Steve, who have kind of seen the not so fun side of CSM and kind of how you guys are hoping that it kind of hopefully changes for the good in the future. Jin'taan, you want to start?
Sure, I was just making a sarcastic comment in Twitch. Yeah, like I said, I've kind of made my opinion on where I want the CSM to be quite clear. But in general, what I hope is that we just make the game better. I know that sounds really fucking base and simple, but that is at the end of the day what everyone here came into the CSM to do, I hope. And at the end of the day, that's what I hope we can do. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening and changing within the game, considering Citadels, the capital rebalance. There's probably going to be other rebalances, I guess, in the future. I want to be able to guide those in a way that's going to be beneficial to the game, the content that is provided to people, and kind of everything that comes underneath that.
What about you, Sullen?
I mean, kind of similar to what Jin'taan was saying. I just kind of hope I can actually have an impact in terms of the outcome of what we're doing. One of the things I really would like to be able to do is kind of give CCP kind of an alternate view sometimes. Sometimes they make changes that, we all understand why they make the change, and it's supposed to be for the better of all, but they don't take into account one small little thing, and then the end result actually is completely the opposite of what the entire goal was. And I kind of hope that I'll be able to at least kind of give them like, well, you guys know that like if you do this, sorry about that. We're about to start going down.
Hopefully you mean landing instead of anything else.
Yeah. We're about to start descending, so yeah, we're going through
Something
some pretty bad
Allahu Akbar.
turbulence right now, so.
Oh God! Quick, work on some math equations.
Yeah, anyhow, I'm gonna get off of here though, so, but yeah, I just hope I can actually have an impact and give them kind of that alternate opinion and views on certain things before they make changes that we may not want.
Alright, thank you, Sullen. And then Steve, do you have anything to add? I know you've been on previous CSMs. Anything that you hope is good, like different, I guess, for the future or this CSM?
Mostly, I just hope the changes which we've seen very recently continue. It's mostly process stuff, making sure that we keep talking and stuff keeps coming through us. That's pretty much it. I'm reasonably happy with the way my individual communications have happened with CCP. I just want to make sure that it stays at a good level on an institutional level.
And what about you, Gorski?
I just want to say like that I'm pretty hopeful about this new group with the CSM group we have now. The first meeting went really well, and I hope at least that everyone's gonna get along well.
Yep. Hopefully there's no drama. But Corbexx, do you have anything to add? I know you're no longer on CSM, but do you have anything to add or any, I guess, words of wisdom to pass on to CSM 11?
I don't know. I hope there's going to be a lot more of the CSM talking to the player base and organising stuff like with the actual players for CCP, not just personal opinions and stuff. But like, we'll wait and see.
Okay, and then Lanctharus. I know this is, I guess, technically my show on EVE and TTV, but do you want to talk about your future with EVE and TTV? That'll be exciting.
So coming soon, PM.
Yeah, and then I know in chat someone posted, I was hoping to give a shout to the Toronto Player Gathering, which will be September 3rd at 7:30 at the Amsterdam Brew House. This takes place during Fan Expo Toronto. And I've heard a lot about Fan Expo in Toronto.
On this and creating a forum for people to have these like longer discussions to kind of really get involved and kind of get a better understanding of how the CSM works, what's actually happening, and the, and just the general like process for people to kind of learn more about it.
That'll be exciting.
So coming soon, PM.
Yeah, and then I know in chat someone posted, I was hoping to give a shout to the Toronto Player Gathering, which will be September 3rd at 7:30 at the Amsterdam Brew House. This takes place during Fan Expo Toronto. And I've heard a lot about Fan Expo in Toronto, so you guys should all go to that if you are nearby in Canada. And then, unless Twitch chat has any more questions, I am ready to close the show. So you guys might get bombarded with Twitch
Get a
chat.
chance to do some shoutouts.
Yeah, you can do some shouts. What is it?
Yeah, I'd like to give a shout out to my corp Pentag Blade. I'd like to mention that we are recruiting. If you'd like to try the NRDS lifestyle, we are the best candidate.
Does anyone else have shoutouts?
Yeah, can well,
All
it's
the
more of a shout out
motherfuckers
for
in
the
the world right now.
meetups.
That's who I'm giving a shout out.
So there's a meetup I think coming up in Dublin for the Irish guys that Joseph is organising, and also one in I think the New England one's moved, but that's organised by Exoki. That's going to be amazing as well.
And there's a Glasgow meet coming up on
In a month.
June 4th.
Yes, Glasgow's doing that. So that's
Holy
another
cow.
good one. I may even be at that one actually.
You guys have
No.
all these meetups. Holy cow.
We're active people.
We like going to bars.
That is true. You can't turn
Wow.
that down.
Booze is always good.
Cannot confirm that booze is always good. That is definitely not true.
And,
Yeah, I can't fucking walk after this week.
and then I know Sullen gave a shout out. It is Mother's Day in America, so for everyone who may have forgotten, quickly call your mother and say you're sending her something, and then quickly buy her something. Otherwise, you're kind of screwed. You may be kind of screwed. Alright, so with that, I'm gonna close the video. I'll probably do my intro video again as an outro. So if you guys just want to do a goodbye on TeamSpeak, say bye everyone. We can wave.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Alright, take care guys. Thank you.
Signing off from 35,000 feet.